Right now, your smartphone is actively draining your fluid intelligence.
Yep, it really is.
And it is doing it even if the device is like completely turned off and just sitting face down on your desk.
Which, sounds impossible, but it's true.
Right. It's wild. So, today on the deep dive, we are looking at the hidden cognitive costs of living in a constantly connected world. We're unpacking this thing called the Google effect, which is basically outsourcing our memory to the internet.
Exactly. And we're going to examine the behavioral data and the neurobiology that shows how treating the web as this outboard brain is literally rewiring our cognitive circuitry.
Yeah, the mission today is really to figure out what happens to your brain when you just constantly rely on the internet. Because, I mean, I feel like a human flash drive that keeps getting unplugged. Like, I feel incredibly fast, but I just can't hold on to any deep information anymore.
Oh, I think we all feel that. And the human brain is this fiercely efficient organ. It's always adapting to its environment to conserve energy.
Right. It's fundamentally lazy, but in a functional way.
Exactly. For the vast majority of our evolutionary history, our environment demanded that we store crucial survival information internally, right? So our neural pathways were totally optimized for internal storage,
Because there was no Google to ask which berries were poisonous.
right? You either knew it or you didn't. But today, we've suddenly shifted into this entirely new environment, one that's characterized by, well, infinite, immediate, and externalized information.
Right.
And the brain is adapting to this new landscape, but that adaptation is fundamentally altering the actual mechanics of how we process information and construct knowledge.
Well, which makes sense. And we can see that behavioral shift so clearly just in how we consume written information. Like anyone who remembers reading before the internet became huge knows that feeling of being a scuba diver.
Oh, that's a great analogy. The scuba diver.
Yeah, like you'd open a book, take a deep breath, and just submerge yourself into this quiet, linear sea of words. It was deep.
Yes. The process demanded total immersion, and it rewarded that immersion.
But today, I mean, the dominant mode of consumption is way closer to like a guy on a jet ski.
Right, just skimming along.
Exactly. We just skitter across the surface of the web, zipping from hyperlink to hyperlink, grabbing these disjointed snippets of data. We cover massive amounts of superficial distance, but we never actually go beneath the surface.
We don't. And that behavioral shift from diving to skimming, it's it's accompanied by a much deeper cognitive shift. When we ski across the surface of the internet like that, we are fundamentally changing how our memory systems operate.
So, this is where we get into the Google effect, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We can really observe this through the Google effect, which is best illustrated by this fascinating experiment that tested how people retain trivial
It's
facts.
okay, lay it on me.
So participants were given a list of really obscure statements to read. Things like, an ostrich's eye is bigger than its brain.
Wait, is that actually true?
Apparently, yes. But the actual facts weren't the point. Half of the readers were informed that the computer they were using would automatically save this list into a specific digital folder for them to access later.
Okay.
But the other half were explicitly told, hey, this information will be permanently erased as soon as you're done reading.
Ah, okay. So, the expectation of having it saved changes how you read it.
Precisely. The expectation changes the cognitive investment. When the participants were tested later on, their ability to actually recall those facts, the group that believed the information was safely stored away performed dismally,
Like they just dumped it.
completely, compared to the group that knew the data was going to be deleted. They just couldn't remember the facts.
Because, like you said earlier, the brain is a cognitive miser.
Yes, it avoids expending energy whenever possible. When the brain realized the information was externally secured in a folder, it instinctively just reduced the effort allocated to encoding that information internally.
That makes so much sense. But wait, wasn't there a secondary finding with that experiment?
There was, and that's actually the part that reveals the true nature of the Google effect. When researchers tested the participants who failed to remember the facts, they found that those exact same individuals could perfectly recall the exact digital folder where the information had been saved.
Wow. So they didn't remember the what, they optimized to remember the where.
Exactly. Their brains didn't optimize to remember the fact about the ostrich. They just remembered where to find the fact about the ostrich.
Which honestly makes perfect evolutionary sense. Like, if you're a hunter gatherer, you don't need to memorize the exact cellular structure of a berry bush
No, of course not.
or even the precise number of berries on it. You just need to remember where the bush is located so you can navigate back to it when you're hungry.
That's spot on. We are applying that exact same spatial memory strategy to the internet. We treat search engines as a well, like a digital spouse.
Oh, right. Like how someone might say, I don't need to remember my niece's birthday because my partner remembers it for both of us.
Exactly. We use the web as this outboard brain that holds our trivia, and we just optimize for the navigation path required to retrieve it.
Hmm.
We have effectively outsourced our biological memory to silicon.
The internet is our external hard drive.
Yes.
Okay, but, and I have to push back a little here, isn't that outsourcing actually a net positive for our cognitive capacity?
How so?
Well, if I don't have to clutter up my biological memory memorizing state capitals or historical dates or ostrich anatomy, doesn't that free up a massive amount of mental bandwidth?
The freeing up space
Like
argument.
that, like clearing out all that trivial storage space should theoretically leave me with way more room in my mental hard drive for actual creative, profound, and deep thoughts, right?
Right. I hear this all the time. But the logic of that argument relies on a flawed assumption. It assumes that the human brain functions exactly like a computer hard drive, where deleting old files somehow frees up gigabytes of space for new software.
And it doesn't.
No. Biological memory systems do not operate like silicon. To understand why outsourcing information actually degrades our intelligence rather than enhancing it, we really have to look closely at the mechanical relationship between working memory and long-term memory.
Okay, let's unpack that. Working memory is like our conscious short term focus, right?
Exactly. It's the contents of your consciousness at any given millisecond. And long-term memory is the vast, highly structured storehouse of all your accumulated knowledge.
And working memory is notoriously bottlenecked. Like I've read, we can only actively hold what, about 2 to 4 pieces of information in our working memory at one time?
Right. Just a few chunks of information before things start literally falling out of focus. Long-term memory, conversely, is virtually limitless.
Wait, really? Limitless.
Yes, a healthy human brain does not run out of storage space. It never gets full the way a 500 gigabyte hard drive does.
Oh, wow. So the whole idea of freeing up space doesn't even make sense neurobiologically.
It's completely neurobiologically unsound. A much more accurate mechanical analogy for how memory transfer actually works isn't a hard drive, it's plumbing.
Plumbing. Okay, I'm listening.
Think of your working memory as a tiny thimble, and your long-term memory is a massive bathtub.
Thimble and a bathtub. Got it.
So when you're reading a physical book, when you're in that deep scuba diving state we talked about, the information flows like a slow, steady drip from a faucet.
Okay.
Your brain has the time, and crucially the uninterrupted focus, to catch those drops of information in the thimble, carry them across the threshold of consciousness, and pour them into the bathtub.
Oh, that makes sense. You're systematically transferring data from that volatile short term focus into permanent long term storage.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But the web, by its very architecture, is not a dripping faucet.
No, it's a high pressure fire hose.
Exactly. Reading on a screen means navigating this constant barrage of hyperlinks, pop-up ads, multimedia embeds, navigation bars, and push
It's
notifications.
a wall of stuff.
And that sheer volume of stimuli blasts the thimble. It overflows our working memory capacity almost instantly. So very little of the actual information makes it into the bathtub.
Because the thimble is just constantly spilling over.
Right. And the interference isn't just visual, it is highly cognitive.
What do you mean?
Well, think about when you encounter a hyperlink embedded in a paragraph. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the region responsible for executive function and decision making, it has to momentarily halt the actual reading process.
To deal with the link.
Exactly. It has to evaluate the hyperlink, determine its relevance, calculate the potential reward of clicking it versus the cost of losing your place.
And then make a conscious go or no go decision.
Yes. And even if you choose not to click the link, that entire evaluation process consumes a fraction of your working memory buffer.
That is nuts. So reading online actually becomes an act of constant triage.
Yes. Constant triage.
We aren't just decoding text anymore. We are simultaneously engaged in visual processing and executive decision making.
And that constant redirection of mental resources creates a severe cognitive load.
Hmm.
Because your brain is expending so much energy just evaluating the environment and managing the overflow of the thimble, it lacks the remaining resources required to perform the deep semantic processing.
The processing necessary to actually encode the text into the bathtub,
Exactly, into your long-term memory. We just remain trapped in the working memory bottleneck.
which really directly challenges the whole illusion of multitasking efficiency, doesn't it? Like, we navigate the web with 20 tabs open, we're running a messaging app alongside a complex article, and we feel incredibly productive.
Oh, you feel very busy.
Right. Because we're processing so much varied input. But the human brain is physically incapable of processing two cognitively demanding tasks simultaneously, right?
It cannot do it. It relies on rapid serial task switching. Every single time we switch our attention between the article and the messaging app, we incur a switching cost.
A switching cost, like a penalty.
Exactly. The brain has to flush the working memory buffer of the previous task's rules,
Mm.
load the parameters of the new task, and actively suppress the lingering interference from the task we just left.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. There are studies tracking students who use instant messaging while reading academic material, and the results reveal just how severe this cost is. The students don't simply learn a little less.
What happened?
The constant task switching forces them to take significantly longer to read the exact same amount of material. And on top of that, their comprehension scores just plummet compared to students who study sequentially.
So they are essentially exhausting their cognitive engines to achieve a fraction of the actual learning.
Yes, they're working harder to learn less.
Wow. You know, the great irony of the information age here is that we built the internet to be the ultimate educational tool, right? It's the largest library in the history of human civilization.
Without a doubt.
Yet the very architecture of the tool, which is built on this interruption driven system of hyperlinks and divided attention, it's the exact thing preventing us from actually absorbing the information it provides. Like, we consume vast quantities of data, but we construct very little lasting knowledge.
It's a tragic irony, honestly. And we actually face a similar historical parallel that often gets brought up in defense of the internet:
Oh, what's that?
the pocket calculator.
Oh, right.
When the calculator was introduced into classrooms, critics argued that relieving students of the need to do long division in their heads would erode their mathematical intelligence.
People definitely said that.
But the calculator, as we know, became an indispensable tool for higher level math. So people often ask, why is relying on the internet for facts any different from relying on a calculator for arithmetic?
Yeah, that seems like a really fair comparison. Why is it different?
Well, the distinction lies in how the two tools interact with that cognitive load we just discussed. The calculator relieved the burden on working memory
Okay, how so?
by outsourcing the rote calculation of the numbers. The student's thimble was freed up to process deeper, more abstract mathematical concepts. The calculator turned down the flow of the faucet,
Ah, I see.
but the internet, with its infinite links and notifications, turns the faucet on full blast. It overloads the working memory, which prevents the transfer of complex concepts altogether.
That makes total sense. The calculator protected the thimble, the internet floods it.
Exactly. And beyond just the issue of cognitive load, the calculator analogy breaks down because it misunderstands the fundamental nature of organic memory.
Right. Biological memory isn't silicon.
Right. Biological memory is not a static database where facts just sit in isolated digital silos. When you commit a piece of information to long-term memory, you're not simply writing a file to a disk. You are physically altering the structural architecture of your brain.
We're talking about neuroplasticity here.
Yes. The process of encoding a memory requires neurons to fire in specific patterns, which strengthens synaptic connections. When we internalize knowledge, we are building these complex conceptual frameworks known as schemas.
Schemas. Okay, so what exactly is a schema?
Schemas are basically webs of associated ideas. Every time you deeply learn a new fact and actually transfer it into the bathtub of long-term memory, your brain automatically attempts to connect it to other facts, past experiences, and even emotional states you have already stored.
Oh, wow. So it's weaving it into everything else you know.
Yes, that internal synthesis is how we spot historical patterns, how we develop critical thinking, and honestly, it's how we cultivate wisdom. In cognitive science, there is this guiding principle: the connecting is the thinking.
The connecting is the thinking. I love that.
It's profound.
But if we continuously rely on search engines to hold our facts, those individual data points never cross the threshold into our biological memory, right?
Exactly. And if the dots never enter our brain, we cannot form the schemas connecting them. We lose the capacity for independent synthesis.
Right, like those moments of sudden insight when two seemingly unrelated concepts just suddenly click together in your mind to form a new idea that relies entirely on both of those concepts physically residing in your internal neural network.
You can't connect the dots if you don't actually hold the dots. By relying on the outboard brain, we revert to being mere decoders of information. We skim the surface, we retrieve a fact, we utilize it for the immediate task at hand, and then we just discard it.
It never becomes integrated into our mental model.
Never. We're basically trading the rich, organic, interconnected web of human intelligence for a flat, disconnected index of where to locate data on a server.
That is so bleak. Okay. Well, if the active use of the internet is overloading our working memory and degrading our ability to build schemas, the logical countermeasure seems pretty straightforward, right?
Turn the device off.
Yeah. We simply turn the device off. When we need to engage in deep, focused work, we mute our notifications, flip the smartphone face down on the desk, and rely on our internal cognition. Problem solved.
I wish it were that simple. But the diagnostic landscape of our digital habits is far more insidious than just active distraction.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah. This brings us to the brain drain hypothesis, which demonstrates that the active use of the internet is only half the problem.
Okay. What's the other half?
The mere physical presence of a smartphone in your immediate environment systematically reduces your available cognitive capacity,
Even when it's off.
even when the device is entirely powered down or silenced.
That is terrifying. How do we know this?
It was heavily documented in this highly controlled experiment that evaluated working memory capacity and fluid intelligence.
Okay, and fluid intelligence, just to be clear, that represents our ability to reason abstractly, identify complex patterns, and solve novel problems.
Exactly. It's the most demanding, heavy lifting our brains can perform. So researchers brought subjects into a lab to perform these really highly demanding cognitive tasks. And they divided them into three distinct groups based on the location of their smartphones.
Okay, lay out the groups for me.
Group 1 was instructed to leave their belongings, including their phones, in a completely separate lobby outside the testing room.
So, phone in another room. Got it.
Group 2 kept their phones on their person, zipped in a pocket or a bag.
Okay, pocket.
And Group 3 was instructed to place their phones directly on the desk in front of them, but, and this is key, the devices had to be placed face down and completely silenced. No visual notifications, no auditory cues, no haptic vibrations.
Okay, so the phones on the desks were functionally just inert pieces of plastic and glass. They were paperweights.
Precisely. Yet the performance gap between those groups was staggering.
What happened?
The participants who left their phones in the other room significantly outperformed the group with the phones on the desk.
Seriously.
Yes. And they also clearly outperformed the group with the phones in their pockets.
That is wild. Why would a phone sitting face down on a desk make you worse at a cognitive test?
The mechanism driving this cognitive drain is rooted in how our brain manages high priority stimuli. You see, a smartphone is arguably the most salient, personally relevant object in the modern human environment.
Yeah, it's basically our whole lives in a box.
Right. It's the conduit for our social connections, our news, our entertainment, and this continuous stream of variable rewards. The brain's dopaminergic pathways recognize the phone as a survival level reward object.
Survival level, wow.
So when the device is in your visual field or even just physically accessible in your pocket, your brain's automatic attention system is continuously drawn toward it.
Okay, so it operates kind of like being on an intense diet.
That's a good way to look at it.
Like, imagine sitting at your desk trying to do a really complex tax return, right? And someone places a massive, perfectly baked slice of your favorite chocolate cake right next to your keyboard.
That sounds like torture.
It is. You might possess the discipline to not eat the cake. You might successfully keep your eyes focused on your tax documents without ever directly looking at the plate. But the sheer willpower required to continuously inhibit that automatic urge to eat the cake consumes a massive amount of your limited mental energy.
Exactly.
The effort of active inhibition drains the exact cognitive pool you need to perform the math on the tax return.
That is a perfect analogy. Active inhibition requires metabolic resources. Even if you are successfully focusing on your work and you don't consciously register any desire to check your phone, your anterior cingulate cortex is burning finite working memory capacity to suppress the automatic orienting response.
So your conscious mind is reading the document, but a background process in your brain is basically just continuously monitoring the device, waiting for a signal.
Yes, exactly. And the cognitive penalty of this active inhibition is directly correlated with an individual's level of smartphone dependence.
Oh, so the worse your addiction, the heavier the penalty.
Exactly. The heavier a person's daily reliance on their device, the more severe the brain drain effect becomes when the phone is nearby. For highly dependent individuals, the neural circuitry is so thoroughly primed for constant digital interruption that the hypervigilance actually manifests physically.
Wait, physically? Like how?
This is the mechanism behind phantom vibration syndrome.
Oh, when you feel your phone buzz, but it didn't.
Yes. The brain's attentional system is so desperately seeking the dopamine release of a notification that it essentially hallucinates a signal. It interprets the ambient friction of clothing against your leg as a digital buzz.
That is so incredibly common.
It is. And when your neural pathways are that deeply wired for continuous interruption, it is literally mathematically impossible to have your full working memory capacity available for deep, focused thought.
Because the background app in your brain is eating all the RAM.
Essentially, yes.
We've adopted this primary tool for navigating the world that just keeps our cognitive architecture in a perpetual state of split attention. Like we are actively sabotaging our ability to enter that deep sea diver state of immersion we talked about.
We really are.
So, reclaiming our fluid intelligence and restoring our working memory capacity requires more than just, discipline or turning on a do not disturb setting.
Discipline is not enough. It requires enforcing protected periods of separation. If the active inhibition of the device is what drains the battery, the only way to recover your full cognitive bandwidth is to remove the high priority stimulus from the physical environment entirely.
Right. The device must be in another room, genuinely out of sight and out of mind, to halt that background processing.
Yes, establishing those boundaries is critical because the alternative carries really profound implications for the future of human cognition.
Right, because neurons that fire together wire together.
Exactly. Our brains continuously mold themselves to the tools we use. If our primary interface with reality is a machine that's engineered to fracture our attention, optimize for speed, and externalize our biological memory, we really have to consider what mental faculties we are allowing to atrophy.
Right. And for you listening, this is what it comes down to.
Hmm.
If we systematically outsource our memory to search engines and surrender our attention to these algorithmic feeds, we risk losing the internal scaffolding required for complex thought.
It's not just about forgetting trivia.
No, we're dismantling the schemas that allow for quiet contemplation, for deep empathy, and for the sustained emotional depth that relies on a rich, internalized understanding of the world.
The internet is an extraordinarily powerful tool, but the tool is changing the hand that holds it.
Yeah. If we never protect the quiet space required to dive deep, the neural pathways that make us uniquely human may simply fail to wire together. Which leaves you with a question to mull over today.
It,
If outsourcing our memory outsources our capacity for wisdom, what happens to a society that forgets how to think for itself?